Thank you for this very warm introduction. And it is true, coming here, I feel like I'm coming home. And this is the largest gathering I've been part of in almost 2 years. And it feels so good. And I also want to welcome all of you who watch us from home to usher in Thanksgiving. Let me start with a story told by the comedian Emo Phillips. Already? He tells that one day I saw this guy about to jump off a bridge. I said to him, "Don't do it." He said, "Nobody loves me." I said, "God loves you. Do you believe in God?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Are you Jewish or Christian?" He said, "Christian." I said, "Me too." "Are you Protestant or Catholic?" He said, "Protestant." I said, "Me too." "What franchise?" He said, "Baptist." I said, "Me too." "Northern Baptist or Southern Baptist?" He said, "Northern Baptist." I said, "Me too." "Northern Conservative Baptist or Northern Liberal Baptist?" He said, "Northern Conservative Baptist." I said, "Me too." "Northern Conservative Baptist, Great Lakes region or Northern Conservative Baptist, Eastern region?" He said, "Northern Conservative Baptist, Great Lakes region." I said, "Me too." "Northern Conservative Baptist, Great Lakes region, Council of 1879 or Northern Conservative Baptist, Great Lakes region, Council of 1912. He said, "Northern Conservative Baptist, Great Lakes region, Council of 1879. I said, "Die, heretic," and I pushed him over. Now you have to be really insensitive standing here as a rabbi in a church insulting Christians. That was not my intention, of course. There is a similar joke about Jews, but it has too many unfamiliar Hebrew words, so I decided to skip it. But I can assure you that we Jews have even a larger issue with so many groups and subgroups and factions. And of course, I didn't even need to tell it about religion. It's the same about politics, right? Are you Republican or Democrat? Are you progressive or are you Trumpist or you are Reagan conservative? And then at the end, die heretic. We laugh, but at the same time we want to cry because we know that this story reflects our society. It has always been there. Even Freud, he was the first to describe it and coined the expression of when people get so annoyed, not at those who are so different than them, but those who are so close to him. He called it narcissism of small differences. Which means, and when you even look at the big wars and the big feuds in the world, it's not between nations or communities that have little in common, but those who are really close, but not exactly the same. And that's why family feuds are the worst. And you'll see tomorrow during your Thanksgiving dinner, if a coworker makes a comment on your at your expense, you'll brush it off, you may even laugh. But tomorrow, when your cousin or sister-in-law makes the same comment, you'll be ready to kill them. It's true, just remember, the first murder ever was Cain murdered his brother, Abel. Somehow we can tolerate those who are so different from us, but when it comes to those who are so close to us, we cannot. Because if they're so much like us, how come they don't understand that what I think and what I say is true? How dare they having a different opinion? However, until recently at least, we have our issues, but when a disaster struck, for example, I'm looking around, almost everyone here still remembers September 11th. It united us. It was not who cares who voted for Bush or not. We were Americans who were attacked. We had a common enemy. We were ready to mourn together, to cry together, and to strike back together. That's who we used to be. Recently, I shared a story with my congregation about the 4 chaplains. It's an incredible story that even if you heard it, it's worth hearing it again. There were 4 clergymen who met at chaplain school at Harvard who volunteered in 1943 to fight the Nazis. They were all on a U.S. transfer boat on its way to Greenland, along with 900 other people. One day before they arrived at their final destination, February 3rd, 1943, a German torpedo hit their ship and it rapidly began sinking. These 4 clergy, Father Washington, a Catholic priest, 2 Protestant ministers, pastors Fox and Rowling, and Rabbi Good, a Reform rabbi, even though they were offered to be on one of the safety boats, they refused. They remained calm. They counseled and comforted the fear-stricken people on the ship. They handed out life jackets. And when the storage of the life jackets were empty, they each took off his own life jacket and handed it to somebody else, knowing that by doing that, they will certainly die. But they wanted to perform the greatest mitzvah, the greatest good deed a person can do, saving someone's life. I don't know what they said to the people, but I can say with 100% certainty they did not ask, are you Jewish or Christian? Are you Republican or Democrat? You're a fellow American, you're a fellow human being. I appreciate your life and I'll do all I can to preserve it. And then towards the end, only 230 out of the 903 people survived. The 4 clergymen climbed up to the upper deck of the ship. They linked their arms, and people heard a cacophony of languages, of prayers and hymns in English, Latin, and Hebrew. I believe that up there in heaven, they still sing these hymns and prayers to honor those clergy. That's what we used to be. But what's happening now? Is it still the case? In the past almost 2 years, almost 800,000 people died in the United States from the coronavirus. A huge disaster. You would expect it to unite us. But of course he didn't. He just pushed us even more apart. Some say it was a hoax, some say it's real. Some believe in vaccines, some don't believe in vaccines. Some think that masks can save us, some think that it infringes on their liberty. 800 dead people and we keep fighting. Is this our trajectory? Can we even survive as a nation, as a society? If we allow this narcissism of small differences to go on, I don't think we have a great future. What shall we do? The opposite of that idea of rendering everyone who is slightly different than you as heretic, we have the idea coined by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who died recently, as dignity of difference. Not only that we try to see what we all have in common and recognize that we have so much in common, but we have to acknowledge the differences, to make room, to make space for these differences, to learn about them, to have conversations about them, to have an open mind. We might be able to learn something, we may change our mind, or just decide to agree to disagree, which is perfectly fine. But can we shift? I wish I could just say yes. But instead I'm going to tell you very short stories about 3 men who died in the past year. 3 men, I believe, embody the idea of dignity of differences. The first one is Father Gregory Pavlovsky. He was born as Yakov Tzvi Hirsch Gringer in Poland some 90 years ago, a Jew. When he was 9, his entire family was murdered by the Nazis and he was left alone. He was saved by the church. He loved it. They treated him well. He even became a priest. But he always saw himself as a Jew. He even said, "I'm a Jewish Catholic priest." He moved to Israel, to Jaffa, and became the priest of the church there, a beautiful small church. Before he died, he went to Poland, where he was born, and bought a plot in the Jewish cemetery where his family was. And after he died a few months ago, he had a Christian service at the church in Jaffa, and then his casket was shipped to Poland, where he had a Jewish burial, where a rabbi said the prayers, Kaddish, and others. I know that theologically it's complicated to be a Jewish Catholic priest, but it was so important for him to say, that's who I am. My faith is Catholic. My heritage, though, my family, where I come from, is Jewish, and I don't want to choose. I love and respect both. This is the dignity of difference. Story number 2. We all remember the massacre at Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh some 2 years ago, a little bit more than 2 years ago. And the story is told by a member of that congregation who walked outside the synagogue a day or 2 after the massacre, still confused, crying, trying to digest what just had happened. And she saw just by the synagogue a white pickup truck, which didn't make sense there. Especially since she saw that the license plate was from Illinois. As she approached, she saw that in the bed of the truck were many white crosses. And she figured out, she didn't know who owned the truck, but she realized that somebody was going to put white crosses at the front of the synagogue to remember the victims. But she said, who was going to tell that person that that's not the right thing to do, to put 11 crosses outside of a synagogue? And she said, it has to be me. And then a man came out of the truck who introduced himself as Greg Zanis, who told her that what he has been doing was to go from place to place where violence struck and place these white crosses. He had placed 27,000 crosses all over America, from Columbine to Sandy Hook, Parkland, and we can have the whole list. He told her that the minute he heard about the massacre, he got in his truck in Illinois, started driving, bought materials for the crosses, and on the way, with some people's help, he built them. And he said, the only thing I don't have is the names of the victims. Can you help me? And as she took the list of the names, she saw that in the cabin of the truck were 11 white Jewish stars. And she and him wrote the names of the victims as he placed the Jewish star on the cross. And he told her that that's what he has been doing. He had many crosses, and on some of them he put Jewish stars and crescents and some other symbols, because it doesn't matter when you're a victim of violence what religion you belong to. You deserve to be acknowledged, to be remembered, to be honored, and that was his life mission. He died young at 69 a few months ago, but all these crosses are a testimony of his clear statement. We are all creatures of God. We all have a soul, and we should be treated with dignity, despite the differences. The Talmud, that was written some 1,500 years ago, has a discussion as somebody asked, what is the most important teaching of the Bible? So some rabbis quote familiar verses like, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But one rabbi said the most important teaching is that God created only one person at the beginning. Just one individual, Adam. And why is that? To teach us that each human being is unique, is different from all other human beings. That's the way God wanted it to be. When people mint coins, they build a mold, and they use this mold to mint as many coins as they want, and all the coins are identical, the Talmud says. But when God creates human beings, each one of us is God's. It's a custom-made creature. Is different, is unique. God did not want us to be the same, because it is the differences between us that help us grow, develop, build wonderful families and communities. And the person who knew it very well, and this is my third story, is Dr. Barry Johnson, your leader, your minister, one of the founders of the Interfaith service, along with Rabbi Aronson, who also had died several years ago, and Father Chuck. What a great idea 25 years ago, as Chip told us. They didn't focus on what separates us, But realizing now we cannot really celebrate Easter or Yom Kippur together, but there are many other opportunities for us to get together because we have so much in common. So we should get together to celebrate and, when needed, even to mourn as a community. When I called Barb, Dr. Johnson's wife, after I heard of his death, she told me when the funeral would happen, and I apologized. I said that I won't be able to make it because I should be in Israel visiting my family after a long time of not seeing them because of the pandemic. And she said, wow, Barry would have been so happy to hear that. First, that you're going to be with family, and that you're going to be in Israel. And it reminded me several years ago when we went, Temple Beth to Israel. Outside, we saw several buses, some of you were there, with a banner, JupiterFIRST, Florida. And on the Inbal Hotel, there was a huge banner. Welcome, Dr. Johnson and JupiterFIRST. Yes, Barry really understood the dignity of differences. We have so much in common, but our differences can only make us better when we take the time to acknowledge them, to make space for them, to learn from them, rather than immediately die heretic, as we tend to do recently. So what are we going to do? Are we going to continue on the trajectory of this narcissism of small differences? Or are we going to change course and focus on dignity of difference? It's up to you. It's up to us. I would like to encourage all of you here, starting now, continuing tomorrow, to take upon ourselves the mission of thinking, of training ourselves, of impacting our families and communities to act according to dignity of difference, because we have no choice. We start with ourselves, our families, our community, and hopefully we'll be able to impact our larger society. So my dear friends, I invite you to join me this year in rejecting the mindset of heretic and adopting the mindset of dignity of others. We can build a community here that is different. We must do it. Let's make God proud of us. I think that would be the best way to thank God for all the blessings in our lives. Happy Thanksgiving, and thank you again for joining us in this really special night that we all needed it, and I think I needed it more than anyone else. Enjoy.